My name is Yari Jones. I'm 27 from Brooklyn, New York. I'm an artist.
My name is Timothy Tukes. I am 23 years old. I moved to New York about over a year ago. I know that gender is a hoax. It's not real.
I'm Jordan, and I'm 20 years old. Yeah, I'm a weirdo, androgynous kid.
My name is George M. Johnson. I'm from Plainfield, New Jersey. I'm a journalist and an activist. Well, I knew I was different since the age of 5.
My name is James Yarkse. I moved to New York City about 2 years ago, and I live in Bushwick right now.
My name's Fred Attenborough. I originally grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, but I've been in Bushwick for 12 years.
Safety looks like, for me, especially as a Black trans woman, being able to navigate the world without violence on the streets, without violence in the workplace, without violence in the home. I think that's super important. So, being able to be myself and express myself how I choose to be, and doing that freely without anybody putting past judgment or trying to put harm onto me.
Safety to me is security, knowing that I have a place to be in my body. I know I live in an anti-Black world. I know that people would much rather see me choke and die than to see me happy and joyful and celebrating my body and living in it.
For me, I feel like being safe or feeling safe kind of just requires like-minded people around me, or something like comfortable, I guess. Something that is familiar, or something that just doesn't trigger me, I guess. I mean, straight white men tend to trigger me. Straight Black men tend to trigger me, probably more than white men.
I don't know what safety actually looks like when you're queer. I do think that sometimes you have to create your own safe spaces. I like to deter the myth that, Black community is more homophobic than any other communities. I think all communities deal with homophobia, and I think all communities have homophobia that occurs. And I think that our community is doing better with it. I just hope that we start to address some of the violence and the bullying and the taunting that's creating suicides and, trans women having a life expectancy of 35 years of age and things like that.
So I guess the spaces that I feel the most comfortable in or the most safe in are the spaces that recognize the injustices going on in the queer community itself.
I do have privilege in certain spaces that I navigate, but I do think the older I get, the less I care about that, and the less I care about dumbing down my identity or not feeling comfortable in the attire I want to wear or what I want to be for people who surround me. I would rather have the conversations with people. And sometimes I wear things because I know it'll force the conversation.
I've spent years being someone that I didn't want to be. And, that was policed by family, policed by society, policed by education, I always kind of concealed myself so I could move forward. But now that all that's aside, it's in my music, it's in my modeling, it's in my everyday life, it's in my clothes. I just love femininity.
In relation to femininity, I am always wrestling with that word. I know femininity in different cultures is different things. And what is considered feminine here in the United States, in Brooklyn, it may not be feminine in other parts of the world. So for me, femininity has always been a tool that I use to navigate the world.
I like to be in control of the way people perceive me. I don't put on makeup because I don't like the way I look. I don't put on makeup because I think it makes me look better. I really just like wearing makeup. I like the ritual of putting my makeup on. It's fun, and I've always just been artistic in that way. I've always just kind of identified more with feminine things, and I don't know if I really know what feminine things are, because the more I kind of unpack what masculinity and femininity and gender is, I'm kind of like, well, what does any of that even mean? And it kind of just all seems kind of arbitrary and pointless, but I think I've always identified more with women. Growing up, anytime we would be in school and they're like, oh, who are your heroes? I would try so hard to think of a man and I couldn't.
I think I wake up every day feeling either masculine or feminine, and I will express that through my clothing, through the way that I walk through the world that day. People don't know where to put me, and sometimes that's off-putting. But in actuality, it's a strength, not a weakness.
Growing up, I've always been in love with the idea of femininity. It goes into the bigger question of asking what is femininity or what is masculinity, things like that. And it's like you could argue with it for hours, but I guess in some of the most stereotypical ways, I guess I would say I love the empathy that femininity has to offer, or like the being strong without having to be like verbal or physical about it, or just like little things that are just a really nurturing spirit overall that I enjoy over masculinity.
What attracts me to femininity? So I think that's an interesting conversation, because I think the assumption is that gay people and queer people aren't innately that. But I was innately effeminate, and I already had the traits of what most people would consider femininity already built within me. I just was exploring them. So sometimes when we start to talk about like those terms of like femininity and masculinity and being effeminate, I think it does get a little convoluted, because I think people think we're like chasing something, and I don't think we're chasing it. I think a lot of us feel it.
Joy looks like authenticity. I think that's me being my best self. As trans folks, we don't get to enjoy things long enough for them to like really settle in. Joy looks like accomplishing things, being successful in whatever you do, and sitting in it and really being able to share it for a long period of time.
Joy for me, or what joy looks like, is difficult to describe, because oftentimes I find it with community, with friendship, with sisterhood, or people of chosen kin. And that's probably one of the safest places where I find security, safety in my joy. But inside me, there are quiet places that that I know that I can go to, that I can reach at any point in time, that no person can tap into, and that's where my joy is.
You know when you have like a theme day at school, and you're like, damn, I hope everyone dressed up, because if everyone didn't, then I look stupid as hell. That's kind of how I felt every day. I was just always like in the weirdest stuff, but it made me feel good to know that I didn't look like everyone else. I went to School of Visual Arts. I'm not there anymore, but I went there for 2.5 years. That was like the first time I had been around so many like people of color, so many different cultures, people being so just like openly themselves, and that was the first time I felt like, oh, I can like do this without having to really watch myself. Like I can just kind of be Jordan.
The things that make me happiest are like when I see like queer kids going to the prom, because I often imagine like if I was bold enough back then to go to the prom with a guy, like how my life not to say how my life would have changed or would have been different, but like what that would have felt like. And so like I do cry sometimes when I see it, because I just think it's so beautiful that like we have gotten there where we're starting to see that more. But to know that whatever I'm doing is creating a path that's much easier for them than I had myself. And so that definitely brings me joy every day.
Joy. I feel like joy for me is just being able to have fun with my friends. I like a lot of artistic shooting, more focusing on the the queer people in my community, I see it as kind of like art therapy, because a lot of the people that I'm photographing don't necessarily feel beautiful, but will come into this space and really take the time to make them understand that their ideas and like the way that they dress and the way that they feel about themselves actually is validated.
I know that the work that I do is going to impact generations to come. And I look at myself and I know that like I am my own role model, I am my own roadmap. I don't know many Black trans people who are in business. I don't know many Black trans people who are working in business and media who are doing what they're doing at my age. No, don't. So like I know that I lead my own path. I know that like it's up to me.
I literally just try to find as many queer people, trans people, people of color, fat people, and try to bring them together, and they feed me and I feed them. So.
Oh, there's hope. There's glimmer of hope that like people can usurp like major odds and barriers to reach different heights, and that's what I hope to do one day.
I often think about that whole hero thing, and so not to say that I think some of our work is to be someone's hero, but I do think that we're cognizant that as visible people, realistically, as visible queer out people, for I would say our generation is like a blueprint. We are going to be somebody's hero likely, because people will teach about us potentially, and our work is out there, and so people will know about us, and queer kids will know about us, and other people will know about us. So I think a lot of us kind of had heroes stolen as children, but I think now as adults we can kind of look at people, our peers, and look to people that we can aspire to be and are inspired by. And the work that we're doing will have a whole generation of children who now have people they can choose from. We have like people now that you can visibly see to choose from, that you want to look up to.